Christina Baur. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good, Darrell. Thank you so much for letting me be here. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Well, you're very welcome. And you have such an interesting history. And we were just talking about Eurovision because that just wrapped up. We had mutual friends, and then you were there attending. Were you part of Eurovision, or were you just kind of checking things out? Or
I was actually part of the German delegation kind of thing. I was there for TV. I was giving some interviews. I was moderating some fan stuff. So not really big part of it, but kind of a part. And I was seeing the whole spectacle, and it was just it's so much fun to go to Eurovision, honestly. And there's so many friends always go to the same event. So yeah, I literally just came back like 10 hours ago. So.
yeah, and for people though, because in the States, Eurovision, they've heard of Eurovision basically because of ABBA, which is kind of funny.
Oh,
But
yes.
but in Europe, and of course in other parts of the world, it's a huge thing. And I was just in Finland watching Eurovision there. So we had Pete and Linda from Finland who were also awesome. So you have such an interesting background. I think you were originally dancer, musician in your younger years, or early years, and then you worked with. You're still working with MWO Management, which is a very large agency, working with top name bands and music people in Europe and throughout the world. Offices in Munich, London, LA, and then you also have your Be Your Own Star program that you launched in 2021. Tell me about that and how you actually got into originally artist management.
Yeah, so you got that great, Daryl. I'm impressed. Thank you so much for reading up so much about what I've done and what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm actually originally a performer. I used to be a professional dancer. I used to play the piano professionally, but kind of being on stage at some point wasn't my biggest passion anymore. I really enjoyed it, but honestly, the thing that really brings me joy is seeing somebody else's dream come true. So, this moment when somebody's on The Voice and they're winning The Voice or something like that, or their
Right.
dreams come true, that's the thing that really brings me joy in my life, I feel like. So, I kind of, I started to study marketing because I wanted to go to that management marketing side of things of the music industry. And funny enough, I was actually on an exchange semester in the United States at that time, and a management company, MWO Management, actually talked to me and asked me if I wanted to be an intern. So we actually met at a convention, and I was happy. I was like, yeah, I found an internship. That's kind of like the starting point to get into the music industry from the management side of things a lot of the time.
Yeah, and it's a great starting point that a lot of people want to skip past, but actually it's very important for learning, right?
Exactly. I've learned so much, but honestly, when I started to be an intern, all this madness happened, 2020, 2021, 2022.
Ah, right.
So
Yeah.
my marketing major came in super handy because it was an online marketing major. So we kind of shifted the whole company on like the, virtual concerts, online marketing kind of side of things, social media, live streaming. Yeah, which clubs have the capacity to do the live streaming even because lots of clubs at that moment didn't even have the cameras and the setup to do that.
Right.
So it was an interesting time, of like finding the right venues, finding the right platforms. We worked then with Weeps, which what got acquired by Live Nation later on. So we had those like super close relationships with them. So that was a really fun time. And, we started also doing a lot of artist development during that time because artists just couldn't go out, couldn't work as much. We didn't have as much to do as managers. So we took on a few artists just to develop them, just to see where they're going. But as the world went back to normal, live touring, working with labels, working with agents again, we kind of stopped working with those artists in the development stages just because of the structure of the company, basically. So we split that up. So Beyond Star kind of started at that time. So I took on the artists and I helped them develop their strategy, their branding, their, how do I release a single? How do I release an EP? What makes sense? How do I find my archetype as an artist? So all those questions is basically what I do with Beyond Star. And I still have my job at MW Management, and we still manage bigger artists than what I do with Beyond Star is for the indie, kind of artists, not signed yet, trying to find a label, trying to find management, trying to get to a point where you can actually be manageable from a big management company.
Yeah, and it's important because a lot of people, especially large companies, they don't often necessarily want to develop artists because it takes time, it takes money, it takes somebody with a passion like you obviously have to do that because that's a very specific space. And that's actually a lot of the people I'm interviewing are up and coming indie bands, indie artists, which I think is exciting. It's sort of like the big name artists are sort of that's the easy fruit from the tree. but it's really, as you mentioned, it's exciting. Like when people send me their EP case and I'm checking out their music, I'm checking out their Spotify. It's exciting to discover new artists. Tell me the process for you with Be Your Own Star. Are they contacting you? Are you contacting them? How does that process work?
I think it's a lot. It's both, actually, both sides. Sometimes I'm in Dublin and, after a tour, a concert or something, we go out and we go to a pub and I see an artist and I'm like, wow, you're amazing. You need to develop a brand. You need to release your music because you're so talented. That actually happened with us. And I kind of helped her with Beyond Star and now we're managing her. So that can always be a thing. Yeah, I can go out, I can discover people, I can talk to them and I'm like, hey, you have such a great talent. I think we need to work together. But also I have so I'm pretty active on social media. So I have a lot of artists reach out to me on social media and trying to, get some direction, get some input from a professional from the music industry. Because it's hard. I mean, a lot of people I work with, they don't want to, their passion is not in developing the artist. Their passion is in making it bigger, having the big picture, doing the Europe tour, doing the world tours and that kind of thing. And you need to have a passion for music, for indie artists, for a lot of different types of people because, I work with all kinds of people together. And one thing I wanted to add real quick to what you said is also for the management companies, it's also hard to develop the artists because you don't know where it's going. Some artists find that the music industry is very hard and then they want to do something else. Or a musician I just worked with, for example, she found her passion in management. So she actually went from being an artist and I developing her to me actually hiring her for the management company. So now she works as a music manager and she's like, wow, this is amazing. I didn't even know this job exists,
And they're the best managers because they've lived it.
Exactly. They're the best managers ever, honestly. Artists who become a manager, they're the best. They're really the best. They have the best chances in the industry.
So everybody talks about building a brand, which of course is important because you have to define who you are, especially in a space that is so noisy. There's so much noise, so many artists. Talk about how you go about that, and also the importance. Obviously, the importance of social media these days is super a big deal. And I know for me, like when people contact me, the first thing I do is I go check out their Spotify. I go check out, not necessarily just for music, but I'm also looking at the numbers and I'm thinking like, how does it make sense if we do something together? So talk a little bit about that.
I agree. It's very, very important to do this social numbers game. I know musicians hate it, but there is a way to go about it, which makes fun. Actually being successful on social media is fun. It's just finding that path for you that makes you successful on social media. That's kind of a little harder, a little annoying sometimes because you need to try out things. And a lot of artists don't jump over that big hill, where it's like, right. I need to try out things and I need to see what works for me and not be afraid of negative comments and not be afraid of, there's a lot of things out there that are really scary. And I do understand that. But for example, negative comments, they're not about you. They're about the person that is texting and sending those.
Exactly right. Yep.
So that's so important for artists to know. It's not about you. It's about that other person that had just a really bad day or is really annoyed with their partner or is really not happy with their life situation. Who knows what they're dealing with? But, these negative comments, they don't belong to you. You don't need to take them to heart. I always say, take comments from people that you would also take advice from. And then
Exactly.
you're
Yeah.
you're good. But backtracking, how do we find branding? How do we start basically with the artists? So we at Beyond Star start with an ikigai model. I don't know if you've ever heard about that, Darrell.
I have not.
It's from Japan actually. So
I used to live in Tokyo, so I'm all ears.
I love that. You've been all over the place, Darrell. Wow, that's amazing. Anyway, so people went to those blue zones. So they kind of did research. Why are blue zones in the world? And blue zones mean that people live longer than all over the world in other places. So one of those places is an island in Japan where they found this model of the ikigai. So it kind of combines 4 different areas of your life of what can you get paid for? What do you love to do? What are your values? And what value do you want to bring to the world, basically? And combining all these areas and finding your why in the world is kind of like the thing that I start to do with the musicians, because I want them to figure out, is it touring? Is it songwriting? Is it licensing? Is it what is the thing that you really burn for? Because the basic we need as artists, as people in the music industry, that we really love what we do, because it's not an easy industry. It is not, you need to structure yourself. You have your own business, so you need to find out what's your real passion. And then we go to, what do you want to write about? What's your genre?
Right.
What's your archetype? Are you more the hero? Are you more the sage? Are you more the jester? So kind of like finding your direction, and then your unique selling proposition. What makes you unique compared to others? Why should people follow you? Why do people fall in love with you? So those are kind of like the starting points. And then we go into the social media strategy, because before, you need to have your branding, you need to be sure why you do what you do and how you do it. And then we go out into the public and show the world. And that's the social media thing, basically.
Yeah, and it's part of kind of what you were just talking about. A lot of artists, especially young artists who haven't been there, they don't have the experience. They're doing things that they think they should do versus things that they actually should do for themselves. Like everybody's saying, well, you need to go tour and you need to do this, but maybe you don't. Maybe you're a songwriter that's going to work on licensing and sync licensing, which doesn't require touring, right? So that's all those points that you just talked about are super important. What are some things like what are the first couple of things that you see with young artists that are red flags for you, that you think, oh, we got to fix this immediately? Because they, again, like, it's for a lot of people, especially young artists, maybe they're very talented, but they just don't know how to move forward.
That's a really great question, Darrell. I love this question. And I think one of the biggest red flags is just sending out mass emails. Trying to hit everyone, trying to be good for everybody, trying to be perfect for everybody. Because I used to be a people pleaser, and I work with a lot of artists who are people pleaser and who would love to make it right for everybody, who want to be the perfect person.
Right.
And the problem is that then they don't resonate with anybody. So if you're too generic, people don't resonate. You need to speak up for them. You need to say something that people are not able to say, or then afraid to say, or they're afraid to speak up, or they're afraid to show something that you're able to show, or you're living something that they cannot live, or they are afraid to live. So
yeah, it requires bravery.
It requires bravery. It really does.
Yeah.
And then also, booking venues, for example, is one of the biggest problems artists have when they come to me. And sending out those mass emails, honestly, my management email, every morning, I just go through it and I delete about 40 to 50 emails from artists, from people who think we're an agency, but we're a management company, who think we're a label, but we're a management company.
And that's another topic we're going to go over, because a lot of people don't know the differences. Go ahead. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it's just, really be sure of who you talk to. Why do you talk to this person? And make them also feel that, the headline even is important. Why do you want to talk to be your own star? Why do you want to apply for a management spot at MW Management? Look up the roster, look up what artists we manage, look up who we work with, and then try to find out if you fit or not, because management companies have different genres. For example, like, we don't work with heavy metal, but I get 1 or 2 emails every week about a heavy metal band.
And Germany is very known for heavy metal, so it's I'm sure you get a lot of those emails.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's just like, the answer will always be no, because we don't work with those artists. So at some point, and I'm really sorry about that, but we get so many emails that I cannot respond to every email. And I know a few festival bookers, they feel the exact same way. It's just, there's such a flood of generic emails that come in that you just cannot answer. And you just go ahead in the morning, delete 40 to 50 emails every morning, and then you start your workday.
And you were just kind of mentioning the difference between different kinds of agencies, agent, manager, label. Just give a brief rundown, because it seems like people would actually know that, but a lot of young artists do not understand the difference. So talk on that if you could.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I meet with a lot of artists, and I always feel like they don't really know the differences and what do I need at which stage in my career.
Exactly.
So I personally, when I would start as a musician, I would start with finding a manager, because the manager is basically your main hub. The manager basically manages everything, as it says. So a manager can also find a label for you. A manager can find a booking agent for you. I see a lot of artists who start with booking agents, which is also fine, because booking agents take care of booking you. So sometimes they can be restricted to a territory. They can be restricted to a genre, for example. So there's different restrictions for agents. But mostly agents want to be kind of exclusive. Same thing with managers. Management is really exclusive, really, really, really exclusive. So I have a lot of people also talking to us because of management, and then they introduce another manager, and then we basically always say no, because management is basically your development. It's the bigger picture. It's pushing you to that picture that you told us at the beginning. I want to be the big rising star. I want to go to The Voice. I want to do this, this, this. And the manager basically takes care that you get to this point.
Yeah, and it's hard unless there's two managers, unless they're on with the same company, is a recipe for disaster.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because you don't know who had which connections, who had which email, who did which deal. It's really setting up for a disaster. So if you're working with two managers, I admire you. Congratulations if you can make it work. I personally cannot, so we only do exclusive management, but agents can be in territories. So basically you can have an agent for the US, you can have an agent for Europe, for Asia. So agents can be territorial, but in those areas, they will also be exclusive most of the time.
Talk a little bit about the difference between touring in the States and Europe, because in Europe, oftentimes they do a lot of small dates because there aren't a lot of mid-level venues. It's either small venues or big, but that's been my experience. But talk a little bit about those differences.
I agree. Yeah, it really depends on your genre, of course, because these little jazz clubs exist all over the world, for example. So little jazz clubs can always be a good solution for you for touring if you're a little smaller or you're starting out. You want to start in a market. So you always want to start in a market small, of course. Like you want to, build up a market and then move on to the next market. So if you're kind of getting there in the US, I would focus on the US first and kind of go bigger and bigger in the US. And then you have a talking point to go over to Europe, for example. So then you can go on a little tour in Europe, which normally then is small little clubs. Yes, I agree with you. And there is, so performing arts centers are not really a thing in Europe. Performing arts centers are a great way to tour in the United States.
Exactly. Yeah, they're great venues. Yep.
They're great venues to perform. Most of the time you get a flat fee, so you for sure get paid. So performing arts centers are a great way to start off in the United States, I feel like. In Germany, most of the time you need to put on the shows. You need to basically rent the venue, and then you it's your risk basically to sell out.
And they call that here in the States, they call that four-walling.
Exactly.
Basically, you're responsible for the venue, you're responsible for ticket sales, you're responsible oftentimes for marketing, promotion. So it's a big commitment. It's a big financial commitment, which is, it's good for people to understand what that is. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Exactly. No. This is very important you explained that. I always take it for granted, but thank you so much. So yeah, it's a big risk because, also doing marketing in a different market is really hard because it's hard for you to get TV interviews, radio interviews. You know, where can I put posters? Because, we're, for example, here in Germany, we're a little stricter about posters. In Italy or in France, you just put them up and you're good, or you ask the venue to do it and the venue will probably do it for you. But in Germany, you need to get like an approval from the city, and then you need to put up the posters just so, the musicians are aware of this is a lot of work in Europe. And most of the time we get a promoter locally in the country we tour in. So the promoter.
Right. They know the rules. They know the laws.
Exactly. They know everything. They take care of everything. And then but you have somebody on the payroll that you need to pay. So there's another risk added to this whole thing where somebody else is involved and you need to pay their fee. So really, for me personally, it's important to know somebody in the area and know somebody in Europe that can handle that for you. Other than just going out yourself and trying to rock and roll all over Europe.
Yeah, because there's even practical stuff like taxes and like visas, which is, I'm sure, a big part of your world when you bring over people from the States, or when you bring somebody from Europe to the States. That's a whole nother, basket of bucket of worms.
And bringing merchandise, that's also really tough one, just to mention that.
Well, right. And then also merchandise, how it's dealt with in the States versus how it's dealt with clubs in Europe. And sometimes it doesn't make sense to even sell your merchandise if they're going to take such a huge, we've all dealt with that stuff. But
they just take like 60% of all your sales. Then you're like, okay, well.
I know. Yeah. It's like, why even sell it? Yeah. And we've done that. We've just said, nah, it's not worth it. I love your passion. And we were even talking before we started. Your passion for young artists. Talk a little bit about mentorship and how important that is for you and also for Be Your Own Star.
Oh yeah, mentorship is, you basically avoiding all the mistakes that everybody else is doing. And it's kind of like just having somebody in the music industry who knows how to navigate the music industry is kind of the most valuable thing that you can have. I don't think it's just limited to the music industry, but we're talking about the music industry. So I think a mentor is just the person you can always go to, the person that has lived through all the mistakes and has done them already for you, so you don't need to do them again.
Yeah, exactly.
And somebody, it's always so hard to look at yourself, and see what you're doing wrong or discover something you can adjust. I just had a meeting with an artist this morning and I was like, your appearance looks great, but your guitar really doesn't match your brand. And that's something, and she was telling me, I would have never seen this. Thank you for coming to my concert and actually telling me, because that's something, you never really look at yourself and then go, oh man, the guitar doesn't match my branding and my artistry, basically. So just little details that people from the music industry, a mentor, can tell you, I think is just super crucial for your career. And it will make a difference long term. There's little bits and pieces that we can adjust that make the picture just amazing, and fans will notice, fans will recognize.
Yeah, and it's always great to have another set of ears, another set of eyes that's separate from you, that's not in your inner circle, to come in and say, hey, let's talk about this, let's talk about that, in a constructive way. It doesn't have to be, it's not a negative thing, but it's so important to get that. It's getting feedback on demos, it's getting feedback on images, photos, clothing. It's like all the nuts and bolts.
Exactly, yeah, going shopping together.
And I mean, the thing is too, like I worked with JLo, I worked with Miley doing production. And the thing is, like with them, they have a team, obviously.
Of course.
They have management, publicists. When you're an indie artist, you don't necessarily have that, although they're trying to get to you to begin that process. So all that information that they can collect is so valuable. What's some advice that you can give to young artists, especially artists that maybe they want to come and tour in Europe and they don't really know what's involved?
I think really trying to find the right communities, trying to find the right people to surround yourself with is so crucial in the music industry. You want people you really vibe with. You want people, not just a manager because it's a manager. I've seen so many artists get stuck because they found a manager and they're like, oh, this is a manager I need to hold on to. Some big management companies don't even do anything for you. So you're just an image on their roster, like really make sure there's somebody who cares about you, who cares about your music, your artistry, who you vibe with, and you're like, I feel like we could hang out forever because we're like buddies, kind of. I always compare management to a marriage. You spend so much time together, and all my musicians that I manage are like my best friends basically, and we just talk every day, and we have weekly meetings with the artists, and we text over the week, and when there's one issue they would let me know and I'll take care of it real quick for them. So it really is, you need to find people you vibe with, you need to find the right communities, other musicians that you can work with, that you can collaborate with. If your goal is to go in a certain market, like for example, Europe or Asia, find people who are in this market. And maybe there's people, from Europe who would love to tour in America, and then open up for each other. So basically you go on tour in America with your audience, bring that artist with you as an opener, and vice versa. And you can then open in Europe and start getting that fan base basically in Europe, and then prove it that you can actually make it in Europe and that you can sell tickets in Europe.
And the opening act thing is something not to be dismissed, because when you go into a new venue and you don't know if you're going to be able to sell your own tickets, it's great to be able to have this sort of built-in audience, and
Right.
hopefully they come over to you. And then you're also, as you mentioned, you're working with these other established artists in that market. I think that's super important advice.
Just finding the right people, really. That's all for me, like having the right people with me on my road here in the music industry. Having fun is so crucial. People can tell if you're not having fun, if you're not enjoying it anymore. Really
Yep.
sit down and tell your people. I sometimes have artists and I can tell they're not happy. And then I sit down with them and I'm like, what's up? What's happening? Why, you're not happy with what you do, and you need to be happy. You need to have a passion for this. And then we regroup and we re-strategize, because maybe, the goals and dreams shift in life. That's totally fine and it's totally okay. But really having those people who you can have that conversation with, I think having with you is crucial.
And do you think that, I mean, because obviously everybody, they want the big record deal and they want the big management company and the big publicist, but sometimes, as you mentioned, actually are better off being with a smaller company that's much more invested in their success versus a large company has a huge roster where you're just going to kind of get put on the website. Talk a little bit about that and your thoughts on that.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I agree with you. So, a lot of artists come to me and say, I want a record deal with Universal. I want this. I want, go
Right.
on tour and Live Nation and, all these big names in the industry. And I understand because it just feels like all the big artists are with them, and that's what it is. And that's the problem also for the small artists, that all the big artists are there. So you're kind of sometimes just a name on their roster. And I actually, this is a long time ago when I started managing, so like 15 years ago, kind of a long time ago. A band actually was on a record deal and they were touring for a whole year basically just to release that record and record videos and all this yada yada, all this big stuff, and they were with them and they financed that all. And then I don't remember who it was, a big artist released the same day as they did their album, and as soon as that was released they got dropped by the label. The record never got released, and they did all this work and all this stuff, and they just got dropped basically by the labels. So those big labels, those big management companies can do that, and they will, and I think really crucial, especially at the beginning, is having a small company, finding somebody who is personally invested in you, somebody who is really passionate about you. You know, sometimes people would write me because they're like, hey, I need a website. I used to code websites. And then we had a conversation and I was like, wow, you're amazing. Like, I also checked out your music. You need a manager. And then we signed them on with MW Management. You know, sometimes there's like these wild stories where you're like, oh, I love this person. I love the music. I love what they stand for. And I want to sign this person. And you need to wait for that moment, I think, where somebody really approaches you and says, wow, you're amazing. I want to sign you. And then, you know, not this like begging and I need to be and I want to be and please take me on.
Give me a fee and I'll sign you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't pay fees. Please don't pay fees for management or for booking, you know, all that kind of stuff. Because people will only do that when they are not sure if they can make money with you. When I'm sure that you're going to be touring and that you're going to be successfully releasing music, I will take a commission because I know that I'll get a commission. So these upfront fees, not be a little careful about that.
Yeah, I always think of the band Journey because they were with Nightmare Management in Northern California for years. And that was one of the famous things with them is that they never had a contract. It was like, we'll work together as long as it makes sense. And when it doesn't make sense, it's okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
So as long as you believe in us and we believe in you, then it works anyways.
Basically, that's what we do too, actually, with our management company. We have a 1 year's contract and then it just gets renewed without actually having another contract with some of our artists because it's, you know, we don't want to force people to stay with us in a management company or be on Star, same thing. I don't want to force people to stay with me because that doesn't make me happy and that doesn't make the artist happy. So why should we force ourselves to stay in a relationship, in a working relationship where everybody is unhappy? You know, like we let them go. We love them. We support them. That's it.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it's a marriage, so it's something that both have a commitment to it, and you make it work, and it's long term. It's not that's never like a short term thing. Hopefully, if everybody does their job.
And if everybody's on the relationship, we have artists for 20, 25, 30 years that we manage. It's long term. It really is long term, and it's supposed to be.
Exactly. Yeah. If it's done right, I totally agree with that. Christina, tell people how they can reach you and check out your company and everything that you've got going on.
Yeah, awesome. So I post a lot on social media. So if anybody's out there on social media, beyourown.star is my handle for TikTok, Instagram, all these social media platforms. And Christina at beyourown.star.com is my email address. I'm always happy to, you know, listen to some demos, to give some feedback. If anybody ever wants to get some feedback on something or just some images, more than happy to just, you know, send an email back. I do have a free call for every artist to kind of look over their EPK, their stuff. So if you ever want to just get it quickly checked up, I'm more than happy to do so as well. And then we have also our big academy actually with Beyond Star, where, you know, as an artist, we basically go through the whole thing of how do you really release a song? How do you really book a show? How do you start touring? Well, how we start with the Ikigai actually. So we talked about that and the branding, and then we go into the details of the music industry. So if anybody's ever interested in that, I'm also more than happy to explain a little more to you.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. And I definitely, like I mentioned, I appreciate your passion. I can tell, obviously, it's something that you still love doing, which is super important. And I would suggest to anybody that you shouldn't be involved with any kind of management or professional organization unless you feel like they really have a passion. And you know, obviously, too, your thing about helping young artists, I think is super important.
Thank you so much, Darrell. Yeah, it was awesome to meet you and to talk to you today. Thank you so much for all your great questions. I really, really loved them. And, you know, let's stay in touch. This music industry is one big family, I feel like.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Christine. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Darrell.